The harmonic chimes of unity, a 12-tone sequence unchanged for 18 millennia, echoed through the vaulted chamber of Harmony's voice, signaling the commencement of the 387th Stellar Congress. Representatives of 300 species settled into environment-specific seating pods, a kaleidoscope of biological diversity, arrayed in concentric rings according to their species admission date. Atmosphere barriers shimmered between incompatible biologies as translation fields hummed to life. First Speaker Trellix, a gaseous entity contained within an ornate hovering vessel, began the traditional invocation when the chamber's grand doors burst open with a thunderous crack. Ambassador Zixtal of the Fraxis Collective staggered in, his normally iridescent tentacles ashen gray with terror. 2 security drones flanked him, their weapon systems visibly armed, an unprecedented violation of chamber protocol. "Forgive the intrusion." Zixtal's voice trembled through the translation field. Outpost Sentinel-9 transmitted this before going silent. He raised a quivering appendage, activating a holographic projection in the chamber center. 17 obsidian vessels moved in perfect formation through the darkness of uncharted space, their hulls absorbing rather than reflecting sensor pulses. The footage zoomed to reveal angular script emblazoned across the lead vessel. Tiora United. They approached without triggering our long-range detection grid. Zixtal continued, his respiratory sacs pulsing erratically. When hailed, they responded with targeted data packets that disabled our defensive systems before destroying the outpost with weapons we couldn't even detect. The chamber erupted into cacophony as 100 species shouted questions simultaneously. Security Director Lanetful, a towering insectoid whose carapace bore the ceremonial marks of 70 successful military campaigns, silenced the assembly with a single thunderous strike of his command staff. "I am ordering immediate lockdown of all Congress installations," he announced, mandibles clicking with controlled tension. "The Congress Guard's 7th Fleet will intercept these intruders before they—" "You will do no such thing," interrupted a voice like crystalline bells. The assembly turned as one toward Elder Varine of the Oloxy, his ancient crystalline body glowing with unusual brilliance. At 9 centuries old, he was the oldest living being in Congress space, his species renowned for their perfect memory and historical knowledge. Varine floated forward, the respect accorded his age creating immediate silence. From within his translucent body, he extracted a small artifact of unknown composition, its surface etched with symbols that matched those on the approaching vessels. "For 9 centuries, I have safeguarded the Harbinger scrolls." Varine's voice resonated through the chamber. "They speak of beings from the Forbidden Zone, from a place called Earth. Beings with forms similar to many of us, yet fundamentally different. The scrolls named them Terrans and warned they would one day emerge from the darkness." Murmurs of disbelief rippled through the assembly as most delegates dismissed the notion as ancient superstition. Security Director Lanethol was already issuing battle orders through his neural interface when every communication system, in Harmony's voice, simultaneously activated without authorization. The chamber's primary display filled with the image of a human female, her dark hair streaked with silver, eyes projecting unnerving calm. "This is Captain Miranda Chen of the Terran diplomatic vessel Handshake," she stated in flawless Congress standard, her voice somehow bypassing translation protocols. "Your security measures are impressive but unnecessary. We come to join the conversation." As if to demonstrate their capabilities, the Congress's vaunted emergency defense grid automatically activated, only to power down inexplicably seconds later. In the stunned silence that followed, Elder Varine whispered words that sent chills through every delegate present. "The Harbingers have arrived. Everything changes today." High Admiral Kreshva's scarlet war plumage bristled as he strode into the tactical command center of Harmony's voice. The avian commander's 4 golden eyes narrowed at the holographic display, showing the approaching Terran vessels. "Deploy the 7th Defensive Fleet in formation triax," he ordered, talons clicking against the metallic floor. These intruders will witness the might that crushed the Centauri uprising. Junior officers scrambled to relay commands as the pride of the Congress military. 200 vessels representing the pinnacle of combined galactic engineering moved into their famous impenetrable configuration. Kreshva permitted himself a rare smile as the formation locked into place, a defensive matrix that had never been breached in its 3-century history. His triumph lasted precisely 6 seconds. "Sir," stammered the sensor officer, a Velian whose photosensitive skin had blanched to pure white. "The Terran vessels are. They're inside our formation." The tactical display confirmed the impossible. The human ships had somehow materialized between the Congress warships without triggering a single proximity alert. Ships that should have required complex deceleration procedures had simply appeared, as if space itself had folded around them. "Impossible," Kreshva hissed, feathers flattening against his skull in the avian expression of deepest alarm. "Nothing can penetrate a triax formation without." A communication officer interrupted. "Admiral, the Terran diplomatic shuttle is requesting docking permissions." Before Kreshva could respond, docking sensors indicated the shuttle had already attached itself to Harmony's voice, despite lacking proper authorization codes. The security override protocols failed to activate. For the first time in his 60-year military career, Kreshva felt something alien to his warrior culture: helplessness. In the formal reception chamber, a delegation of 30 high-ranking Congress officials waited in rigid formation, surrounded by elite guards with weapons discreetly charged. The ancient ritual of first contact was about to commence, a carefully choreographed ceremony that typically spanned 3 days, beginning with the ceremonial quarantine period, where envoys would communicate only through sanctified interfaces. The airlock cycled open. 5 unarmored humans entered, 3 females, and 2 males of varying ages, wearing simple garments that bore none of the expected military insignia or status markers required by Congress protocol. Most shocking of all, they wore no environmental protection, despite the chamber being calibrated to Congress standard atmosphere, which analysis had already determined would be mildly toxic to their physiology. The lead human, a diminutive female with silver-streaked hair and eyes that seemed to evaluate and dismiss the impressive Congress delegation in a single glance, committed an unprecedented breach. Rather than waiting for the ceremonial greeting, she walked directly to the Congress arbiter, a being whose position demanded 3 formal approaches separated by ritual pauses. "I am Ambassador Elena Reyes of Terra United," she stated in perfect Congress standard, extending her hand in a gesture alien to most species present. "We observe but are not bound by your traditions." The Congress delegation froze in collective shock as she casually produced a small device that projected a 3-dimensional map revealing thousands of Terran outposts scattered throughout and far beyond Congress space, regions previously thought uninhabitable or unexplored. "We've been watching for decades," she continued, her tone conversational despite the diplomatic earthquake she was triggering. "Your void-born enemies attacked our colonies first. We've developed effective countermeasures. Perhaps we should discuss an exchange." As delegates erupted into arguments about proper protocols, Reyes demonstrated capabilities that silenced them all. Without any visible technology, she mentally interfaced with the Congress systems, bringing up classified files on void-born incursions on the main display. Files secured behind 27 layers of quantum encryption. "Your security," she noted with a slight smile, "needs updating." Despite explicit prohibitions and triple-layered security codes, the restricted observation feeds revealed a steady stream of curious delegates sneaking into the quarantined Terran quarters. Security Chief Lanethul bristled with frustration, his mandibles clicking rapidly as he watched the footage. No matter how many guards he posted or how sophisticated the biometric locks, the delegates found ways to circumvent them, their curiosity outweighing both protocol and personal safety. The Regalis delegation's premier xenobiologist, Dr. Morton, had been the first to breach containment under the pretense of medical necessity. The 7-limbed scientist now hovered nervously in the human common area, his central eye cluster dilating with shock as human Dr. Samira Patil casually lifted a steaming mug to her lips. That beverage contains molecular acids that would dissolve Thelian tissue, Moorton cautioned, his translator struggling to convey his alarm. Dr. Patil smiled, taking another deliberate sip. Coffee? It's actually quite mild by our standards. Our digestive systems evolved to neutralize far more caustic substances. To demonstrate, she casually picked up a decorative metallic paperweight from the table, an object that required protective handling by most Congress species due to its toxic composition. We evolved on what you'd classify as a death world, she explained, rotating the metal between bare fingers. Average surface gravity 9.8 meters per second squared, temperature variations spanning 150 degrees in some regions, atmospheric oxygen content of 21%, conditions lethal to roughly 70% of Congress species without extensive support systems. Newertan's recording appendage trembled visibly. Yet you wear no protective gear even now. We find your atmosphere slightly uncomfortable, like breathing at high altitude, but hardly dangerous. In another section of the quarantine zone, cultural attaché Ved Lauren observed with professional detachment as two humans engaged in what appeared to be violent combat. The slender diplomat flinched visibly when the smaller human, junior diplomat Jen Liu, was thrown to the floor with what should have been bone-shattering force, only to bounce up immediately, laughing. "You call this recreation?" Ved Lauren asked, appendages wrapped protectively around his torso. "Just sparring," Liu explained, wiping sweat from his brow. "Builds camaraderie and keeps reflexes sharp." Ved Lauren's professional composure nearly shattered when the larger human, Commander Jackson, invited him to try a round. The very suggestion violated 16 different cultural taboos about interspecies contact. Most disturbing of all was the human medical bay, where Congress medical observer Dr. Thexel watched in horrified fascination as the human medical officer, Lieutenant Rodriguez, demonstrated their healing capabilities. With clinical detachment, Rodriguez made a precise 10-centimeter incision on her forearm, allowing purple-tinged blood to well briefly before applying a small device that accelerated tissue regeneration. Within minutes, the wound had formed what she called a scab, the first stage of a natural healing process that required no technological intervention beyond initial sterilization. Most minor wounds heal completely within days, Rodriguez explained to the stunned physician. Major trauma might require surgical intervention, but our tissue regenerates at rates far beyond Congress averages. In the Secured Intelligence Suite, Congress Intelligence Director Havix confronted Ambassador Reyes directly, his gelatinous form pulsing with accusatory colors. "These adaptations cannot be natural," he stated. "What genetic engineering created your species?" Reyes merely smiled, an expression most Congress species found unnervingly ambiguous. "No engineering, just natural selection under extreme pressure. Something was hunting humans on Earth long before we developed civilization. We still don't know what it was. We just know we survived it." The implication sent a chill through Havix's usually temperature-regulated form. The Stellar Congress primary chamber had transformed into an impromptu negotiation arena. Barricades of cultural consultants and translators surrounded the human delegation as preliminary talks began concerning Earth's potential relationship with the galactic community. Ambassador Reyes had just begun outlining the human concept of open diplomatic channels when the emergency alarms shattered the diplomatic atmosphere. The chamber's primary display fractured into emergency protocol configuration as blood-chilling screams echoed through the acoustic amplifiers. The holographic transmission showed Governor Pelvaxis of Vexus Prime, his normally iridescent exoskeleton cracked and leaking vital fluids. Behind him, the colony's administrative center burned, its supposedly indestructible quantum glass walls shattered. The Voidborn came without warning. The governor gasped, his translator struggling to maintain linguistic coherence as his biological systems failed. "They penetrated our baryon shields instantly. The outer settlement is." His head jerked toward something off-screen, eyes widening in terror. They're inside the central compound. Millions already dead. Evacuation protocols failing. The Congress representatives watched in horror as shadow creatures with glowing sigils for eyes materialized through what should have been impenetrable walls. The governor's final moments were broadcast in merciless clarity, obsidian tentacles wrapping around his neck, his exoskeleton shattering like glass, the holographic transmission ending abruptly with his decapitation. High Admiral Kreshva recovered first, feathers bristling as he barked orders into his neural interface. Deploy all available vessels to Vex's sector immediately. Emergency Protocol Alpha Zenith. The tactical officer's response chilled the chamber. Fastest vessels require 27 standard cycles to reach Vex's prime, sir. The colony will be lost. Kreshva finished grimly. Like Tarsanus. Like Helios IV. In the stunned silence that followed, Ambassador Reyes quietly tapped her wristband. The chamber's tactical display suddenly switched to a different feed. Real-time footage showing sleek Terran vessels already engaging a massive void-borne fleet in Vex's space. The timestamp indicated the battle had been raging for nearly an hour. We dispatched a battle group when we detected their dimensional signatures 6 hours ago, Reyes explained to the speechless delegates. Standard protocol for void-borne incursions near populated systems. Security Director Landfall's mandibles clacked in outrage. You had no authority to deploy military assets in Congress space. This constitutes an act-off. War. Commander Jackson interrupted with a harsh laugh. Tell that to the void-borne. We lost 8,000 colonists to these things last year on New Anchorage. We've been hunting them ever since. The gathered representatives fell silent as the tactical display showed a human cruiser, designated Bangalore, on the overlay, executing an impossible maneuver. The vessel appeared to disintegrate into fragments of light, only to reassemble behind the void-borne flagship, unleashing weapons that seemed to fold space itself around the enemy vessel, compressing it into a fraction of its original size. More shocking still, the footage showed human dropships deploying directly into Vex's Prime's toxic atmosphere, their troops wearing only lightweight tactical gear rather than the sealed environmental suits Congress forces required. The human soldiers moved with uncanny coordination through the burning settlement, their bodies somehow resisting the xenotoxins that melted standard Congress environmental equipment. From his position at the chamber's edge, Elder Vareen studied the battle footage with growing agitation. The ancient crystalline being suddenly clutched at his central core, the equivalent of a heart in his species. Impossible, he whispered, his voice carrying in the stunned silence. They're using precursor combat methods thought lost for millennia. The spiral formation, the quantum displacement. These are techniques from the archive of forgotten wars. The implications silenced even the most vocal critics of the human intervention. Colonel Thexlor, the Congress's most decorated tactical observer, had violated 17 regulations by boarding the Terran battlecruiser Shiva without proper authorization. Now, secured in the vessel's Combat Information Center, he watched the battle for Vexus unfold with professional detachment that gradually gave way to unfiltered astonishment. Breaking further protocol, he transmitted unfiltered footage directly to the Stellar Congress chambers, bypassing the standard censorship algorithms designed to sanitize combat realities for civilian representatives. The Stellar Congress watched in horrified fascination as void-borne attack craft unleashed their infamous mind-shredding attacks. Psychic assaults that had driven entire Congress species to extinction. The neural dampeners built into Congress combat suits typically provided only minutes of protection before catastrophic failure. The human Marines wore no such protection. Their brain structures, Colonel Thexlor reported, his voice trembling slightly, operate on different principles. Their consciousness appears distributed rather than centralized, allowing them to compartmentalize psychic trauma. The footage showed a human surgeon stagger momentarily under a direct psychic assault, blood trickling from her nose, before straightening with a grimace and continuing to coordinate her squad's movements. What should have been fatal was, to humans, merely painful. More disturbing to the military observers was the complete absence of the rigid tactical formations that defined Congress combat doctrine. A human squad pinned down by overwhelming voidborne fire suddenly split into micro-teams using hand signals incomprehensible to Congress tactical computers. They flanked the enemy position using improvised explosives fashioned from the colony's own infrastructure, demonstrating battlefield adaptation that no simulation would have predicted. They communicate through expressions and body language faster than our combat meld systems, noted Colonel Thexler. Their tactical doctrine emphasizes individual initiative rather than centralized command, precisely the opposite of our approach. The most shocking moment came when the Voidborn deployed their dreaded reality distortion field, a weapon that created a zone where physical laws became malleable, rendering conventional defenses useless. In previous encounters, this had been considered an inescapable death sentence, with entire Congress battalions vanishing into dimensional fractures. The human captain on the ground merely smiled grimly and activated a device strapped to her forearm. "Quantum anchors deployed," she reported calmly. Reality stabilized. The field collapsed, causing visible confusion among the Voidborn forces, who had never encountered resistance to their ultimate weapon. "We developed this tech after their first attack on New Denver," she explained to the stunned Congress observer accompanying her. "Took us 3 months to reverse engineer the principle." The battle culminated with an unprecedented tactical decision. Human commandos executed a boarding action on a disabled Voidborn vessel, something no Congress force had ever attempted, given the toxic atmosphere that dissolved standard environmental suits within seconds of exposure. The boarding party emerged 20 minutes later, carrying data cores and biological samples, their lightweight tactical gear showing only minimal corrosion. The Voidborn ship self-destructed behind them, but not before yielding critical intelligence. When the initial findings reached the tactical center, Commander Jackson's expression darkened. The navigation charts contained jump coordinates for every major Congress world. He informed the Stellar Congress representatives, including supposedly secret military installations. He turned to Colonel Thexler, his eyes unnervingly direct. "They'd been studying you for decades. We've apparently been distracting them from their main target." The colonel's translation implant struggled to find equivalents for the emotions suddenly flooding his biochemistry. The main chamber of the Stellar Congress had never been used for impromptu scientific presentations. The ceremonial space, with its tiered seating designed according to ancient protocols of species hierarchy, was ill-suited for the chaotic energy human xenobiologist Dr. Samira Patel brought to the floor. Surrounded by holographic projections and biological samples recovered from the Voidborn vessel, she projected her findings onto the central display with no regard for the traditional permissions process. "These aren't natural beings," she explained, highlighting synthetic gene sequences that pulsed with unnatural regularity. "The Voidborn are weaponized lifeforms created approximately 20,000 years ago using techniques we've only theorized about. Look at these modified base pairs. They are designed to enable quantum state manipulation at the cellular level." Murmurs of scientific interest quickly gave way to shocked silence when her next slide appeared. Unmistakable Congress security authorization codes were embedded within Voidborn communication protocols, their alphanumeric sequences familiar to anyone who had served in the higher echelons of government. Security Chief Lanithul lunged toward the control panel, his exoskeleton clicking with barely contained rage. "This presentation contains classified material and unsubstantiated accusations. I order its immediate termination." His mandibles clacked in surprise when he found himself physically restrained, Commander Jackson's hand gripping his primary appendage with unexpected strength. "Let's hear the doctor out," Jackson suggested, his tone making it clear this was not a request. Dr. Paddle continued relentlessly, displaying evidence that sent shockwaves through the assembled representatives. "These data packets show regular transmissions between Congress military headquarters and Voidborn command vessels dating back 30 years. The pattern is clear: negotiated surrenders of outer colonies in exchange for protection of core worlds." High Admiral Kreshvar rose from his ceremonial seat, his feathers fully extended in the avian display of absolute authority. His ceremonial weapon, until now a mere symbol of office, hummed to life with deadly energy. "This human slander will not." His words died as Elder Vareen floated forward, the ancient crystalline being producing data crystals from within his translucent form. The artifacts pulsed with age verification markers indicating they were centuries old. "I have documented this corruption for generations," Vareen announced, his crystalline form pulsing with colors that translated to deep rage in his species' emotional spectrum. "I lacked only the final proof these humans have provided." The chamber descended into chaos as faction representatives demanded explanations from military officials. Amid the growing pandemonium, Dr. Paddle delivered the true bombshell. "Our DNA analysis shows the Voidborn were created by the same civilization that built the Temple of Ascension." A horrified gasp swept through the chamber. The Temple of Ascension was the most sacred site in Congress space, the foundation of 6 major religions, and the cornerstone of countless species' origin beliefs. The Congress Temple Guards, their ceremonial armor now fully activated for combat, moved to surround the human delegation. "This blasphemy cannot stand," their commander declared. "You will be detained until..." The standoff escalated when the human security detail activated personal shield technology that Congress scientists had long declared theoretically impossible. The bubble-like fields shimmered with iridescent energy, deflecting the guards' initial stunning blasts back toward their sources. As tensions reached breaking point, a previously silent human observer stepped forward. The elderly woman, introduced only as Professor Zhang, activated a small device that projected a star map onto the chamber's central display. The map showed the original homeworld of the Voidborn creators, a planet labeled in ancient script that Elder Vareen translated with visible shock. "Earth," he whispered, "the forbidden world." Professor Zhang nodded solemnly. "We didn't just fight them," she revealed to the stunned Congress. "We inherited their legacy. What you call Voidborn, we knew as the Harbingers, the first wave of something far worse that follows." 3 days of unprecedented riots swept across Congress worlds. The revelation of military corruption and the shocking connection between the Voidborn and the sacred Temple of Ascension sparked religious upheaval on 27 planets. The emergency session of the Stellar Congress convened in a chamber half empty. Many representatives had withdrawn in protest or fear, while others were frantically trying to contain civil unrest on their homeworlds. The chamber's atmosphere filtration systems struggled to process the biochemical signatures of stress and anger emanating from the assembled delegates. Species that normally maintained rigid emotional control now leaked pheromones of distress that required specialized atmospheric scrubbers. Ambassador Elena Reyes, unnervingly calm amid the chaos, ascended the ancient speaking platform. The polished stone surface, worn by millennia of alien appendages, had never felt human footsteps before. The chamber fell silent as she activated a holographic display showing a document titled The Terra Accords. "We expected your society would require time to process recent revelations," she began, her voice carrying effortlessly through the vast space. "However, the Voidborn will not grant such luxury. Our intelligence indicates they are massing for a coordinated strike against your core worlds." The delegates had expected pleas for alliance against this common enemy. Instead, Reyes' first demand stunned them into silence. "First, we require the immediate dissolution of your species-based caste system," she stated bluntly. "This hierarchical structure has governed galactic politics for millennia, but it has made you predictable to your enemies." She projected tactical simulations showing Voidborn battle strategies, exploiting known behavioral patterns of specific species, the cautious retreat of Fraxis forces when flanked, the predictable counterattacks of Viridian squadrons when their command vessels were threatened. "Racial determinism is not merely philosophically flawed," Rice continued. "It is a tactical vulnerability the Voidborn have exploited systematically. Her second demand triggered outraged murmurs. Immediate voting privileges rather than the standard 100-year probationary period for new species. In exchange, humans would provide the quantum drive technology that allowed their vessels to traverse Congress space in hours rather than weeks, technology that would revolutionize commerce, defense, and exploration. Most controversial was her third demand: complete military integration rather than the traditional segregated forces. This challenged the Congress's oldest taboo against mixed-species combat units, based on millennia of biological incompatibility research. "Your enemies have weaponized your fear of difference," Rides argued, her voice cutting through the growing clamor. "While you maintain biological segregation, the Voidborn exploit the predictable weaknesses of each species." The chamber erupted into chaos when she revealed humans had already been covertly training mixed-species battalions in neutral space for years. The holographic display showed these controversial units in action. Soldiers of 12 different species operating with unprecedented coordination, their biological limitations compensated by complementary strengths. These integrated units have achieved combat efficiency exceeding pure species elite forces by 340%. Rice stated as the evidence scrolled behind her. "We've confirmed this across 73 combat scenarios." As if to demonstrate the reality of her claims, the chamber doors opened to admit these controversial soldiers. Their bodies showed prohibited cross-species modifications using human medical technology. Fraxis tentacles grafted with Viridian armor plates, quantum communication nodes embedded in Tresson neural clusters. Several traditionalist representatives attempted to flee, only to discover the station's escape pods had been mysteriously disabled. "We're not leaving until you vote," said Commander Jackson, stepping forward with a predatory smile. "Our intelligence estimates you have 8 days before the Voidborn strike. Choose quickly." The final vote commenced as the Stellar Congress's long-range sensors detected Voidborn vessels, materializing at the edge of the system, far earlier than predicted. The ancient voting protocols, designed for deliberations spanning months, were compressed into frantic hours as representatives calculated political survival against literal extinction. The Congress battle cruisers moved to intercept the Voidborn fleet, their formations adhering to tactical doctrines unchanged for centuries. The results were predictably catastrophic. Voidborn vessels executed precise countermeasures that exploited known Congress maneuvers, systematically disabling the outer defensive perimeter. In an unprecedented tactical decision that violated 900 years of military doctrine, Admiral Kreshvet transferred fleet command to a human tactical officer, Captain Maya Rodriguez. The avian commander's feathers trembled as he removed his ceremonial command medallion and placed it around the human's neck. "Save them," he whispered, the translation capturing none of the complex harmonics of grief in his native language. What followed would be studied in military academies for generations. Using Congress ships in formations never before attempted, Rodriguez forced the numerically superior Voidborn fleet into a quantum gravity well created by overlapping drive signatures. The Congress crews, accustomed to rigid command structures, struggled to adapt to her rapid-fire orders that required individual initiative rather than collective response. The victory preserved Harmony's voice, but came at a shocking cost. 17 Congress vessels sacrificed in a diversionary maneuver that Rodriguez ordered without hesitation or apparent remorse. The traditional Congress doctrine valued preservation of forces above all. The human approach accepted necessary sacrifice for strategic advantage. As rescue operations recovered survivors, the emergency voting session concluded with narrow approval of the Terra Accords. Representatives of 43 species formally abstained. 17 withdrew from the Congress entirely, but the majority recognized the existential necessity of human alliance. The physical transformation began immediately. Human engineers employed technologies previously forbidden under Congress research restrictions to transform the ancient chamber. The hierarchical seating arrangement, a physical manifestation of species ranking established millennia ago, gave way to a circular forum where species designations were deliberately intermixed. Architecture shapes thinking, explained the human design lead. Your chamber reinforced division. Ours will cultivate collaboration. The first integrated military units deployed throughout Congress space within days, their impossible effectiveness silencing even the staunchest critics. Species that had evolved on worlds thousands of light years apart now fought with synchronized precision that traditional forces could never achieve. Biological limitations became tactical advantages when properly combined. The methane-breathing Kaldorans providing combat support in environments toxic to most life forms, shielded by the radiation-resistant Fraxis, who in turn were guided by the tactical acumen of human commanders. Yet unease permeated the new order. Intelligence reports confirmed humans controlled far more territory than originally claimed, including systems long thought uninhabitable. Their outposts extended beyond mapped space, suggesting a civilization far more extensive than they had revealed. The final revelation came during the ceremonial integration ritual, when Ambassador Reyes unexpectedly invited Elder Vereen to Earth, a sacred honor never before granted to non-humans. Before departing, the ancient being addressed the Congress one final time, his crystalline form pulsing with colors that translated to both wonder and dread. "They did not approach to join us," he proclaimed, "but to save us from ourselves. I have seen Earth's secret. They are not the descendants of the precursors who created the Voidborn. They are what the Voidborn were designed to destroy, and they have returned to reclaim their galaxy." As if responding to his prophecy, long-range sensors detected thousands of new signatures entering Congress space from all directions simultaneously, the true Terran fleet revealing itself at last.